Welcome to this quick tour of the Arduino IDE. This is the first video lesson that I've ever done, so I hope it goes well, and we'll soon see, won't we? Right, so what are we going to do? Well, hopefully in the first lesson, which wasn't a video, it was just some instructions on how to download the Arduino IDE. Hopefully you got that installed. If you struggled with it, if you look at the bottom of the lessons, there are a couple of links to not only the Arduino site, which has a good tutorial, but there was also a nice video tutorial by Ross McWhirter. So why reinvent the wheel? Right, what does an IDE do? Well, basically it's the program that we're going to use to develop our Arduino software. Now, that means that the first thing that we need it to do is we need to be able to write code. So you could start to think of your IDE as a bit of a digital word processor, and that starts to show itself up more with the next feature, because you could write some code in Notepad and get that into your Arduino if you really know what you're doing. It's beyond me, but it can be done. But we don't just need to write code, especially as we're new at this. We're going to make some mistakes. So the IDE also checks our code. It does the equivalent of a digital spell checker. Now, one thing to be aware of as a digital spell checker, it checks the words are correct. But it doesn't mean that you can't use the wrong words spelt correctly, and it doesn't mean that your program's instantly going to work. Just because I could learn some words in French doesn't mean that I'm going to go out and put a decent sentence together. I struggle enough in English. So the equivalent of the digital spell checker, the code checker, will check the syntax of our code, and quite often it will make suggestions depending on the different IDEs that are available. But that's basically where we are at this point. It's going to help you to write your code, then to check it, and then of course the next thing it's going to do is something called compile your code. Now, as we're all new, what does that mean? Well, it means it's going to turn it into a language that the Arduino understands. The Arduino, the language that we will write in, C++, is not a language that the Arduino uses. It will sit there using a machine code, lots of zeros and ones. Technically, I suppose we could write in that. You'll be there forever. So what the compiler does is takes a language that is pretty user-friendly and turns it into a language that the Arduino understands. And finally, of course, once it's in a language that the Arduino understands, our IDE then allows us to upload that code to the Arduino, install it into the unit so that the Arduino then runs our bit of code. So those are the basic items that the IDE does. So what we're going to do now is I'm going to switch to another screen, and we're going to have a look at the Arduino IDE and do, if you like, a bit of a whistle-stop tour. Right, well, this is my computer desktop, and let's get the IDE started. So I've got it down here on my taskbar, and it opens up. Here we go. Now, if you're doing this for the first time, you're going to see one little difference. Down here on the bottom right hand corner, it says Arduino Uno on COM26, and that's because the last item I had connected to my computer, the last Arduino I connected, was an Arduino Uno on COM26. Now, you don't need to panic about that right now, but it's probably going to be missing on yours because you haven't connected an Arduino, unless of course you've got that far, and you're doing well. So here we have a blank sketch. The IDE will always load the last sketch you worked on. So if you followed one of the tutorials and you've loaded the blink sketch, then you're probably looking now at the blink sketch. If you've not run any sketches, then you're probably looking at something like this. This one says sketch underscore equivalent July the 15th A. It's July the 15th where I am. So this is the first sketch A of the day. If I create a new sketch, guess what? July 15B. I'll let you guess how that works. Right, quick tour. So, starting at File, just some things for you to see. Obviously Open Recent. If you're new to this, you're going to see nothing. As you can see, I've got quite a few things in there. Another important part is examples. Now again, I've got lots of extras loaded into my IDE. You may, when you start up for the first time, only have these first sort of built-in examples. Now don't worry about that, because these are good built-in examples. We can see under Basics the blink sketch, which is a sketch that a lot of people use the first time they load the IDE. But all of these examples, if you've got time, are worth working your way through. They just help you to get some ideas about what is going on. Now the rest of it is pretty easy. Obviously close, save as, and we'll go through some of those in the next lesson. Page setup and print. Why I'd want to print out my code, I don't know, but if you do, that's how you do it. Preferences. Let's whiz into here. Now I gave some advice about where you put a folder called My Arduino Sketches, and the sketchbook location on my particular computer is on my S drive. So if you haven't set this yet, or it's set to a default, just browse, find where your folder is, and that's it. You've done it. You will see on my preferences down here, there's a lot of information here under additional board managers. You don't need to worry about that at this time. That's because I've loaded extra types of boards into my IDE. I program a number of different boards. At this point in our knowledge, we're just going to be using a basic Arduino, so we don't need to worry about that. Skip to edit. Obviously the ability to copy various bits of information, increase the font size, decrease the font size, things like find next and find previous. If you've used a word processor, it works exactly the same way. Type in the word you're looking for. I'm going to type in loop, click find, and guess what? It finds the word loop within my code. Now obviously on this little sketch, who needs to find these things? It's obvious what's there, but once you start to write very big sketches, then it can be quite difficult at times to find different functions, and so having that find ability is very, very useful. Now under sketch, verify compile. That is exactly the same as this tick here, and what this does is allows us to check that the code in front of us is valid. So if we tick that now and see what happens, the magic wheels are starting to turn. It's compiling the sketch, progress is being made, and finally, if all goes well, it's always the same, isn't it? These things go quickly. There we go. It's done compiling. It gives me some information about the sketch, and basically what that's saying is that the code that it sees in front of it is valid. Now if I make an error, I'm just going to write error here because that'll upset it. If I now click to compile, it comes up with an error and I get a red line over my text to say this is where your mistake is. Now, a little warning going forwards, and you'll see this later on when we're programming, just because sometimes you get a line here saying this is where the error is, sometimes that's not where the error is. It's caused by an error you've made further up or down your sketch. Now, if we go back to sketch, the next one was upload, and this button also uploads. And what this would do, I'm just going to plug an Arduino in now. Hear the magic boing as it sort of joins on. If I click this button now, well, it's asking me to save the sketch first, so I'll save it, and off we go. We're going to upload it. Again, the magic wheels are turning. It compiles the sketch, and then very quickly it uploads it. This one's very, very fast because, let's be honest, there's nothing in it. Okay, that'll do for that. There are some other items that we could use, but I'll just need to unplug again. So if we go back to sketch, yeah, I could upload using a programmer or export compiled binary. We're not going to do that. That's way above us at this point. Right, tools. Let's plug the Arduino back in again. So, important things in the tools. The one is the serial monitor. I'm going to click on that now. That's the serial monitor. And the serial monitor allows us to communicate with the Arduino. Now, what I'm going to do, I'm just going to write some code in here. There we go. Very short program. Don't worry about what the code is about at this point, but if I upload this to my Arduino, let's take a moment. And we can see there, hello. And basically my Arduino, that is the serial monitor, allows me to get information out of the Arduino to see various things that it's doing. So think of it almost as your Arduino's monitor, because obviously your Arduino doesn't have a physical monitor as you would if you were programming a computer. Now, other tools, there is the board manager and selector. So at the moment I've got an Arduino Uno attached and it's on COM port 26. Now, something just for you to know, I don't know why it's on COM port 26. Yours may be on COM port 3, COM port 8, who knows. Your computer just seems to allocate these numbers at random, but whatever number it is, that's the number it is. So just going back to the board selector, there are certain errors that I see all the time that people make, and the most obvious one is they haven't selected the right COM port. Now I've just swapped to COM port 1. Now I know that my Uno is on COM port 26, but what I'm going to do now is upload that program, and we're just going to see what happens. Now, what I'm going to do while it is uploading, I'm going to stop the video. Oh, hang on, it's going to do it quick. There we go. You think it's getting somewhere, and then what I'm going to do is stop the recording and just wait. Well, for you only a moment has gone by. For me it's been about a minute and a half, 2 minutes, and as you can see there is an error. Now this error message, let me just try and alter my screen a minute so you can read the message more easily. Okay, so here's a better view of the error, and it's a weird error. AVR dude STK 500_RECV. What does it mean? Well, basically it means you have selected the wrong COM port. Now, the reason I have shown you this message is that this is one of the most common errors that I see on different forums and Arduino help groups. You'll often get someone who's just starting out crying their eyes out because their Arduino doesn't work, it's a load of rubbish, they've bought a Chinese copy and it's faulty because it doesn't connect. And what they've done is, just change back to the other screen, what they have done is in Tools they have rushed in and they've selected the board. We've all done this, and then they forgot to select the correct COM port. So if you have the wrong COM port, this is the error message you're going to see. So I'm going to set it back to COM port 26, and lo and behold, our code appears in the right window. Now I'm going to show you another, what I call a beginner's error. I'm going to go down to the board. This time we're going to have the right COM port, but I'm going to select the wrong board. Now again, as we go in the boards manager, you probably only have Arduino AVR boards. The line above and the two lines below are because I've got extra boards loaded into my IDE, but you don't need to worry about that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select an Arduino Mega. Just for your information, a Mega is a bit like an Uno on steroids. It's about a third longer, similar shape, but about a third longer. Now what I'm going to do now is I'm going to try and upload this code to an Arduino Mega, even though I've got an Arduino Uno attached. So here we go, and like before, I'm going to stop the recording because you really don't want to watch this screen do nothing. Well, after a couple of minutes of watching nothing happen, I got a new error message, as you can see, and basically it's a similar message, but this time it's saying timeout. And what it's basically saying is, I've been trying to upload this to the board you told me to, an Arduino Mega, but I'm not hearing back. It's just not working. So if you get this type of error, again, always check, have I got the right board selected? And we'll go back to the other screen just to show us how to fix this. So go back to Tools, select my board, get an Uno on there, check again I've got the right COM port, and if I've done that correctly, it's all going to upload nicely and we're all going to be happy. Now on that last message, there's one other reason that you can sometimes get a very similar message, and that's to do with the cable that you've connected your Arduino to your computer with. Now I would recommend that you use the sort of light bluish cables that you tend to get with an Arduino. Other cables do work, but I've just found over my time of programming that there are certain cables that for some reason Arduinos don't like. So if you get that error message and you've looked here and you've got the right board, the right COM port, just take a look at the cable that you're using and see if you can swap it for another one. Right, last thing to look at on our whistle stop tour, help. And the important one here is the reference. Now when you click on the reference, it gives you the language reference, and this is, if you like, almost like a dictionary of terms that are used when we're programming. Don't panic when you're a newcomer that you're looking at this. You know, you're looking at symbols like this and thinking, what on earth is going on here? What do they mean? What is a void, a boolean, a char, an unsigned char, or a byte? You are learning a new language, and we will go through these things. Some of these things you will never use. let's be honest, there are things here, there's some of these mathematical functions, I've never used them. I've never used any of the trigonometry functions, never needed to. But once you've learnt to use certain functions, you start to understand how it all works. And the nice thing about these is we'll look at serial, because we use that in the little bit of code I wrote earlier, serial begin and serial print line. If we click on serial, we then see down here all the functions to do with serial. So there's serial begin. If we click on it, it'll give us some background information, and at the bottom it'll give a sample. And this is one of the great things about the reference, that for many bits of the reference it's going to give you samples. Now again, if you have a look in there and you sort of think that's over your head, don't panic, we're going to work through this bit by bit. Well, that's it for this sort of whistle-stop tour of how the IDE works. In the next lessons we're going to start to write a bit of code in here and do various bits and pieces. I'm trying to keep these videos to a reasonably short length, so it doesn't all go over your head. So hopefully that's been useful to you, and I'll see you in the next video.